Good afternoon, everyone. It's actually very rare to have fast jet pilot and navigator that are of the female variety in a room at the same time. Now, the first thing you need to know about fast jet aircrew is the best thing we like to talk about is ourselves. So welcome everyone, I'm Helen Seymour. I joined the Air Force 24 years ago, which is crazy to think because it's literally flown by in a flash. When I was at school, I joined the Air Cadets, which my mum took me religiously to every week. And that really garnered my interest in being in the Air Force. I decided that I loved the banter, I loved the people, I loved the fact that you could travel around the world. So after training, I went through the flying training system and went on to the Tornado F3, and that's where I met Rosie back in 2005. And then in 2009, I became the first female Typhoon pilot. There's quite a difference between Typhoon and Tornado. The Tornado, there's 2 seats in it, so people like Rosie, the navigators, literally put their lives in my hands because they had no flying controls in the rear cockpit. On the Typhoon, I did quick reaction alert and other exercises around the world, and I also became a flying instructor.
Amazing, thanks Helen. So hello, I'm Nick, or Rosie Stevenson. I was in the Air Force for just over a decade. I was a Tornado navigator or WISO weapons systems officer, or backseat driver, as my husband sometimes calls me. All I wanted to be was a pilot. I realised this when I was 12 years old, and I was actually sat at the kitchen table with my dad, and he was reading the paper, and he said to me, "You have got to see this." And what I could see was a sunrise and the controls of a 747. It was a really evocative picture, and I just thought, this is what I want to do. There were 5 words on that advert. It just said, "This could be your office." And I thought, yep, that's what I want to do. I want to go and fly. So I don't know if my dad remembers that, but he sowed that seed. I then went on to go and join the Air Cadets because I wanted to do everything I could to go and fly. I studied aerospace engineering because I thought I just want to do everything I can. I know that I want to fly. However, when I joined my university air squadron and I did the medical, I found I had one problem that I just couldn't overcome. And that was my size. I was told I was too small to be a pilot, and in particular I was told that my arms weren't long enough. In fact, at a towering 5'4", I'm one of the smallest humans I know of to fly in the RAF. As well as being told I was too small, I was also told I was too light for the ejector seat parameters. So I was devastated to be told that I couldn't be a pilot in the Air Force. So I decided I needed to readjust my aim slightly. So I went on to join as a navigator. So fast forward 5 years, and I found myself at the controls of a £50 million fighter jet, operating the radar, the weapons and communications, and in charge of the safety on board this aircraft. So basically that was kind of how I got into the Air Force.
And the reason we put this up is this is probably one of the only photos that was taken of us. This is back in 2006 at RAF Museum. You can see I'm in my kit, so I've just got out of flying that jet, and Rosie came up and said, "We need to get a photo," because she understood how rare this is. Obviously, fast jet, the majority of the aircrew are male, so we used to get a lot of banter if we used to fly together. On one circuit in the at Leeming from air traffic control, we heard "Caution, birds on finals," which normally is said as a warning to avoid some birds flying, but obviously they were referring to us. And even the squadron boss said, "Guys, you're just going to want a pink jet, aren't you?" So we were never immune to banter, but we always were of the opinion that if the banter stops, that's when you've got to worry.
Absolutely. So, you know, you might be wondering, well, how did we get to the point where we could fly a Tornado or operate as a crew in this aircraft, or indeed a Typhoon, operating at twice the speed of sound? Well, you'll be pleased to hear they didn't just throw us into the back of a Tornado or the front of a Typhoon without some training. So there was a building block approach to training. So we'd start in an aircraft such as a Tutor, which you can see here, which flies at around about 120 knots, which is about 140 miles an hour. So we'd start off in a slower aircraft, and basically, as we went through the flying training system, so you can see the Tucano here, you essentially doubled the speed each time. So this one was about 240 knots before we'd move on to the Hawk aircraft. That's from 100 Squadron with its very cool skull and crossbones on the tail, flying at around about 420 knots before we'd move on to, as I say, the Tornado or Typhoon. And the idea was that you would essentially, as I say, sort of double the speed, and it would increase your capability and your capacity for operating at faster speeds and more challenging aircraft using more capable equipment. So it really did help us in this way.
Let's talk about the jets.
The jets. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about, I guess, our careers. And I'll just start by saying Helen moved on to the Typhoon, which obviously, you know, she'll sit here and talk about all day if we let her. Just to say with the Tornado, it's had a, you know, bit of a bad rap with certain things over the years. And one thing I would say about the Tornado, it's very good at flying in a straight line fast and making a lot of noise. But what the Tornado did have, and what it was very good at, was its weapon systems. It had AMRAAM and ASRAAM, which are advanced medium-range air-to-air missiles, and then advanced short-range air-to-air missiles, which made it a capable platform. And that was kind of our main role, was air defence of the UK and the Falkland Islands. After I did that job role, I went on to become an instructor and a course mentor. So I was on that Hawk squadron with the Skull and Crossbones, instructing fast jet navigators as they went through that stage of their flying training, and I was mentoring them, and that was something that I really enjoyed and found rewarding. And then just before I left the Air Force, I went on to do developmental missile firings. So this picture here, this is the last ever flight of the F3. So when the jet went out of service and I went out of service in 2012, this was the last ever flight. So I'm flying in this formation. And essentially, that's what I did in the Air Force.
We've come here to talk today, not only to speak to you guys, but also to say a very big thank you to the RAF Museum, because we've both left the Air Force now. Rosie left 10 years ago. I left about a year ago. We've both gone on to do other things, but actually, part of the Air Force, what it teaches you to do is always take yourself out of your comfort zone and push yourself. And we set up our own business, which was totally outside of my normal frame of reference. And we started doing this. And the Air Force Museum very kindly let us come and take some photos in front of the Tornado F3.
So it was really nice because we'd gone from, flying as a crew together to now we're basically on a mission. We've set up a company and we've got a QR code with a website where there's more information.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening.